All right, Zach. Illinois is going to Penn State for the unofficial whiteout. The big Week 5 Big Ten matchup has the Nittany Lions favored by 17.5. Wow, that's a lot. Penn State is ranked number 9, comes off a dominant 56-0 win over Kent State. Talked about that last time. While number 19 Illinois seeks its second Big Ten road upset, beating Nebraska in overtime. The game's total is set at 47.5 points, with most bettors predicting Illinois will keep it close. Historically, Penn State has struggled to cover against Illinois. Kickoff is at 7:30 p.m. on NBC this Saturday. Night game for them. Uh, Philip says 9 overtimes minimum.
Please
Boy, that would
no.
that would
Please
make my
no.
heart so happy. Well, we're gonna be up anyway for the Oregon game, so
You will be up for the Oregon game. I will catch it on Sunday.
so what you're saying is you're not doing power rankings Sunday morning with us.
No, 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 no.
Yeah.
I got to teach Sunday school, man. That ain't happening.
No, Sunday's
Um,
always getting in the way. I'm just kidding.
yeah. Give
Yeah,
me an
no,
IV of caffeine for that.
yeah,
Oh my gosh.
go. Man, as much as I would love a 9 overtime thriller, I don't know. That would be pretty crazy having that again. Was that last year or 2 years ago that they had
Two
that?
it was no 3 years ago. It
Oh,
was
3 years ago. That's
2021.
right.
I want the old overtime system. I hate this now too. Like
Yeah,
I would like 9 overtimes if it was like the act like starting from the 25-yard line every time. This whole 2 point stuff is stupid.
yeah.
Sorry, that's my unsolicited feedback to the NCAA, who's always screwing things up. Anyway, go.
Yes, yeah. We agree. NCAA, bad people.
Stinks.
Well, maybe not bad people, but bad organization. All
Yes,
right.
there we go.
Zach, what's your general thoughts going into this one? What do you think about the 17.5 line? Any thoughts on Illinois coming off the big victory? They look like they're going to be a competent opponent for Penn State. What do you think?
I whenever there's a line that doesn't make sense, it really I think there's an opportunity to just kind of pause and be like, what is Vegas seeing that I'm not? Because I look at this game and I'm like, this feels pretty evenly matched. I think Illinois evenly matched. That may not be the right words.
Well,
I think
evenly
Penn
matched
State's
based on how they've played. Penn State has the
yeah,
more talented team. I think
yeah,
everybody can acknowledge that. But
yeah,
based on how they've played, it seems evenly matched. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah. Well, and I think to that point, like I think Illinois has weapons that can exploit Penn State on both ends, right? Like Pat Bryant and Zakari Franklin have been fantastic. Altmyer has been really good at distributing the ball. He's been steady. I've been saying I think he's one of the most underrated quarterbacks in the conference for weeks. I mean, preseason I was saying it, and I think the lines are better than we once thought. Pass protection was really good against Nebraska, and I think on defense they have the second like they have a secondary that can I think slow down an emerging wide receiving core for
Yeah.
Penn State. They're not great, but they're showing a lot more promise than they ever did a year ago. And to me, the line just feels so odd.
Yeah, it feels very odd to me as well, especially with Illinois and their ability to pick the ball off and kind of change things in a moment. And now, if Penn State was very, very explosive, I could see it a little bit more. They might get out to a lead, and then Illinois has to press, and then they're throwing the ball more, and then Penn State maybe gets them in trouble with that. But in this one, I'll be honest, I like Illinois' receivers better than I like Penn State's cornerbacks in this one. And I like Illinois receivers a lot. So I'm not saying anything bad about Penn State's cornerbacks. I'm just saying I think Illinois has two very talented wide receivers in Zakari Franklin and Pat Bryant. And for me, that's going to be the key of the game for Penn State is figuring out how do we slow these guys down, because I think Luke Altmyer has done a very good job. But I got to say, I feel like a lot of the credit goes to Pat Bryant and Zakari Franklin with how they've been able to get open. And obviously, you give credit to the offensive line against Nebraska. They were giving Luke Altmyer time, and they proved us wrong that they were able to pass block Nebraska's defensive line better than we thought. But at the end of the day, I feel like those wide receivers are making plays, they're getting open, and they're delivering available targets for Luke Altmyer and the creative play calling of Barry Lundy in certain situations. What was it? The offensive lineman that caught that pass for the touchdown for Illinois? I mean,
Mhm.
that was very, very interesting to see Barry Lundy do that, and I thought it was creative. And that is going to be a key for me for Penn State is how do they deal with these wide receivers? And if they do deal with them, what does Illinois come up with next, creative wise, that Penn State is going to have to go against?
Yeah, I think the secondary for Penn State is really good, even with the injuries. Winston is out with a long term
Jalen Reed is
injury.
fantastic.
Jalen,
Jalen Reed is
yeah.
fantastic. Yeah.
Um, I do think the corners are good. I think that's going to be an interesting matchup. I think another key with that in the coverage and some of the creativity of Illinois' offense is the linebackers. You know, Tony Rojas, I think, being the ringleader of that group,
Yep.
really good group. And I think the defensive line getting pressure. You know, can Abdul Carter, deny Dennis Sutton, Zane Durant, can those boys get penetration, flush Altmyer kind of out of the pocket, get him off, off his reads? I think that's going to be a big difference in this game because you're right. I think Pat Bryant and Zakari Franklin might be able to win more matchups than they lose in this game.
Totally agree. Totally agree. Now let's talk about Illinois' secondary as well, right? This is another area that I think Illinois is actually better set up than Penn State's wide receivers. I know Harrison Wallace the third and some of these receivers have been getting better, and I think their weapons this year are possibly better than what they had last year. Keandre Lambert Smith was very good last year, so don't get me wrong, but he was one guy. I think as a whole, this Penn State receiving core is better than what they had last year. And I think that's why you've seen Drew Aller be able to air the ball out a little bit more and have some of these bigger plays that they weren't able to have last year. However, Miles Scott and Xavier Scott, these boys are going to get theirs. These boys
Yep.
are going to. I mean, and what's the first name? Cox. I forget his
Oh,
first name.
I don't remember
Carry
his
on or
first name.
something like that. He made a spectacular play against
Yeah.
Nebraska last week. So, I mean, you got Xavier Scott, you got Miles Scott. Is it going to be Cox? Is there going to be another guy who steps up with just like this huge play that kind of turns things in
Yeah.
Illinois' favor? To me, the key to the game is something happens with Illinois' secondary that just turns everything in their favor, whether it's a pick, whether it's a tackle for loss, whether it's a forced fumble, something like that. These guys in this Illinois secondary have to make a play happen that turn the game in Illinois' favor, silences the Penn State crowd, puts them in shock, and they're just like, "Oh my gosh, are we going to lose to Illinois?" Zach, score predictions later on, but I think it's more of a possibility than people think.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, I think Illinois. I think people still see Illinois as the team they thought of preseason, and people forget like Nebraska's. I know people want to dunk on Nebraska and be like, "Oh, Nebraska, they lost another close game." Nebraska's good, y'all. Like they're very
Yeah,
good. And
and
Dylan
honestly, they
Raiola,
played well enough to win that game
yeah,
if they hit the field goal.
yeah, yeah. Or if Raiola hits the touchdown
Or
pass,
yeah,
like, yeah. I mean, Nebraska, they should have won it in regulation, but Illinois, again, to their credit, resolve, uh, poise, and I mean that defense has just been so good. And I think people need to understand, like Illinois, like easily is a playoff dark horse at this point, and they have the schedule where they have enough hard games that they could like they have enough hard games where if they win one of them, like say they beat Penn State this week, but lose to Michigan and Oregon, they still finish 10-2. Like that's like possibility for the playoff. Um Again, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but like I do think they're on that edge of playoff dark horse. And I think part of it comes down to whether they win some of these games, which I think they can.
I totally think so too. I totally think so. I predicted this Illinois team would be ranked at the end of the year. I'm not saying they need to win this game in order to be ranked, but they do have. I mean, this is a pretty tough prediction because they do have a pretty tough schedule, and I don't know if the AP will give them all the props in the world for that. I would like to think they will, but we'll see. But I think this is a game that you at least need to be very competitive in order for that to happen, and I think it
Yep.
will. And so I think Illinois is going to be at the very least very competitive in this game. Let's get to mistakes people need to avoid, or the teams need to avoid. For me, the mistake that Penn State needs to avoid is Penn State needs to avoid going for big plays just to go for big plays. I
Yep.
think if you try to go for big plays just for the sake of going for big plays, Illinois is going to make you pay. Xavier Scott, Cox, Miles Scott, all those guys, they're going to make you pay if you try to force something. If something's open, go for it, but there's still the risk there because of all these playmakers that Illinois has in the back end. But you can't just say, oh, we need a big play here, so we're going to throw the ball down the field, which I know James Franklin didn't want to do last year, but seems like Andy Kotelnicki is a little bit more willing to do this year. I
Mhm.
just think you can't necessarily trust these receivers over the Illinois secondary 100% of the time. I'm not saying that they're bad or anything like that. Like I said, the receiver play has been improved, but this Illinois secondary is just really, really good. And you can have a guy open similar to how Dylan Raiola had his receiver
Yep.
open in the end zone, and Cox made him pay still.
Yep. I think it's
So
good. For me, it's they cannot bring out the Bo Prabula package in this game. Like I saw it against Kent State, it was terrible every time until they played Kent State's backups,
yeah,
which that's not saying much because you should be able to run a package against Kent State starters. I mean, the first pick was because they put in Bo Prabula. Like, don't do it. Just
yeah.
let Drew Aller, let him get a rhythm. Don't do any of this other stuff with Prabula.
I agree. That's a really good point. I wasn't thinking on those lines, but when I was watching Kent State, I agree that was something that they were trying to do that I just didn't feel like it was working all that well. For
Yeah.
me, Illinois needs to avoid the mistake they need to avoid is the offensive line kind of getting, I don't want to say complacent, but trusting the offensive line too much. Even if the offensive line is doing very well, I still have some question marks about them. They give them all the credit in the world. They did well against
Yep.
Nebraska, but Luke Altmyer was still running around a little bit last year, like in that game. And so it still is going to be a little bit of an issue. You can't just say, "Oh, offensive line is fixed" because we went up against
Yep.
Nebraska's defensive line. Nebraska's defensive line did give you some help. This Penn State defensive line, they have some very rabid pass rushers, and it's going to be difficult for Luke Altmyer. He's going to need his wide receivers to get open, and you're going to have good play calling in order to counteract that. I don't think Luke Altmyer is as mobile as somebody like Billy Edwards, so I don't know if you can roll him out as much and like try to put him on the run. I think he's capable of it. Don't get me wrong. I just don't think he's as mobile as a Billy Edwards Jr. So you're going to have to be smart with not just what are your protections and Luke Altmyer, what is he doing for his offensive line back there, but what plays are you calling to make sure that Luke Altmyer can get the ball out fast if he has to.
Yeah, that's good. I think it's simple, but I think this probably goes along with it, but you've got to at least this is very similar to my uh which prediction? I forget. It doesn't matter. Don't give up on the run. Like I know it's going to be
Was that the
tempting.
Rutgers one, or no? I think I
That's
predicted
what
it.
I thought it was Rutgers, but I was like, I don't think it was Rutgers. No, it's
Don't
Maryland.
abandon the run.
Is
Oh, Maryland.
Maryland
Yeah.
like you're going to be tempted to abandon the run? I don't abandon the run because you're going to need that to set things up for your playmakers down the field.
Yeah. I agree. I agree. Philip says Altmaier is surprisingly mobile. I agree. He is mobile. I'm just saying he's not somebody that's going to pull the ball down and run every single time. So I'm not
Yeah,
trying to say Altmaier isn't mobile. I'm just saying that's not like something I first think of with Altmaier. He
yeah,
can run. He can get around back there. But I just wouldn't rely on it every single time. I wouldn't rely on it as much as I would with other guys like Billy Edwards Jr. I hope that makes
yeah,
sense. I'm not trying to trash Altmaier. I think Altmaier is a very good quarterback. I think he's been doing very well,
yeah.
better than most people have expected, including me. I didn't give him as much credit to start the year. All right, Zach, predictions, score predictions. I have mine, but I'm gonna let you go first.
Ah, I see. So I think one thing we have not mentioned in this game that I think swings things a bit for me, Andy Kotelnicki, as the offensive coordinator for Kansas, diced up Illinois. Now I know it's a different team. It's a year later, but I do think that's a factor. And now he's doing it with honestly a much better roster. And I think a huge key to this game that maybe we haven't talked about enough, Nick Singleton, Katrin Allen, Tyler Warren. And they have a whole Tyler Warren package where he can throw, he can run, and that dude, I mean, he didn't throw the greatest pass in the world, but that's the package that I'm looking out for far more than Prabula.
Yeah.
But not it's more than that though. Like those three guys, I think can be a nightmare for Illinois in this game because of the offensive line, because Tyler Warren he's not matching up against the secondary as much as he's going to match up against linebackers. And I think he has a decided advantage in that area of the field. He has 16 catches for over 220 yards. He's the main target for Drew Aller. And I think those three guys are really going to carry the day. I do think Illinois is going to keep this close. I think this is close into the fourth quarter. I've got 31-20 Penn State, but 24-20 with probably about 2 minutes left in the game.
Mm. Well, Zach, I respect your pick, but I am going with the Orange Crush because I have my Illinois shirt. All right. You all thought I just bought an Indiana shirt. I also bought an Illinois shirt.
You're just
too.
pandering to the Illini fans right now.
No.
What is this?
I believe in Illinois. I believe in Luke Altmyer. And listen, I was saying it last episode. I think Brett Bielema is a way better coach than people give him credit for. And I think he has a darn good defensive coordinator in Aaron Henry. I am picking Illinois to win this one on the road in the unofficial whiteout. I think Illinois' defense is going to show up. I think they are going to pick off Drew Aller twice in this game. I think Drew Aller is going to get himself in trouble twice. I think they're going to stop the run game, and the run game is not going to be nearly efficient. And I think Illinois wins this one 24-17.
Ooh, lower, a little bit lower scoring.
Yeah.
I think that is very possible. By the way,
I'm not buying an Altmyer jersey, Philip. Keeps telling me I need an Altmyer jersey. I'm not going to copy Kent.
Yeah,
I will say I copied him when I was posting about Caleb Johnson the other day because he was posting about it.
I will say this: every time I pick against Illinois in a big game, they prove me I pick against them and they win. And so I think Illini fans, just if you're like Zach, why are you picking Illinois? You don't want me picking Illinois because every time I pick Illinois, they win, or I pick against Illinois,
You're actually doing them a favor.
Yeah, I'm doing you guys a favor. So
there you go.
Yeah.
There you go. No, I mean, in all seriousness, I do think Illinois has a very good chance to win this game. I think that the national media is kind of sleeping on them, and I got to be honest, and I know Penn State fans are going to hate me saying this, but I think if you look deep down inside your program, you actually agree with this. This is a big game, and James Franklin, I don't trust him. I trust Brett Bielema more than I trust James Franklin. Now, James Franklin could prove me wrong. Right?
Mm-hmm.
They can come out and they can win this one 40, to 17 or something like that. Don't think that's going to happen, but it could happen. But I need to see James Franklin do that. He has struggled with Illinois before in the past. He has struggled with really good teams in the Big Ten, and I think Illinois is elevating themselves to that level year after year after year. Do I ever think they're going to be on like the Ohio State level where they win the Big Ten consistently, or the Michigan level where they win 3 times in a row or anything like that? No, I don't think they're going to get to that level. But I think they can be a team that gets up near the top and is a top 5, top 7, top 8 team in the Big Ten consistently. And I think that's the start of it now. And it starts with this win over Penn State. 3 ranked wins for Illinois, Zach. Can you believe it?
Yeah. I'll just offer one counterpoint to that. Because I agree with you. I even said, do you trust James Franklin going into Ross-Ade, which we know how bad Purdue has been. So joke's on me. I will say the one season where James Franklin did win big games was when he had a very good offensive coordinator. Joe Moorhead won the big game that I was surrounded by Penn State fans for against Ohio State, which was a miserable experience as an Ohio State fan, by the way. But I think that's where I'm like, big game James. Like if he didn't have Andy Kotelnicki, I'm like, it might be an upset. I think Kotelnicki actually is going to be an equalizer in this game.
You think he's the difference?
Yeah.
Right. I can respect that. I'm a big Kotelnicki fan. I think Kotelnicki did a very good job at Kansas, and I think that he's going to continue to do good stuff at Penn State. But
I also need to address one thing. Philip, I would love it to add nothing more than to do something. I ain't buying a jersey because I'm too cheap. So if you want to find something $5 and
go
under
to
that I
home
have to
field and
buy
get yourself a T-shirt on clearance,
on
Zach.
clearance, okay. How much are those? How
I,
much are those?
I think the clearance is like 15, $20 or
Oh,
something like that.
okay. I'll do that. If Illinois wins, I'll buy a home field Illinois shirt
Yeah, on clearance.
on clearance.
Yeah. It might be out to date. It might have, I don't know,
Hey,
like
the
Juice Williams'
fact
name on it or something like that.
the fact that I'm even saying I'll buy something, just understand that I like this is a commitment because I hate spending $5.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not, but I you know
Well,
how many times I've thought about buying a CJ Stroud or Justin Fields jersey? I'm like, no, no, I'm not spending money on this.
well, if you do, you'll put it to good use because you'll wear it on the podcast.
There you
Everybody can
go.
see it.
There you go. There you
There
go.
you go.
I'm not always an Ohio State homer. Hey.